The disproven pro-Trump QAnon conspiracy theory has reached millions worldwide, spreading disinformation on social media.
KTLA's Christina Pascucci is here in studio with the story of how the QAnon movement has impacted a local family. Christina, good morning.
Jessica, Frank, good morning to both of you. And the story you're about to hear is shockingly not that uncommon. A young woman's parents, desperate for truth in uncertain times, found that truth through QAnon. While believers call their movement the Great Awakening, it's inspired some violent attacks, prompting the FBI to label Q as a fringe conspiracy and potential domestic terror threat. When was the last time you talked to your parents?
I haven't spoken to my parents in 8 months.
Los Angeles resident Reagan Wallace says her evangelical parents' all-consuming belief in the QAnon conspiracy is destroying her family.
I've disagreed with my parents about things throughout my life, but it's never stopped me from being able to have at least somewhat of a healthy dialogue.
What is QAnon? It's a hypernym or a catch-all word for a group of internet conspiracy theories that allege that the world is run by this elite group, this faction, this cabal of satanic worshiping pedophiles. This includes people like President Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, the Dalai Lama, the Pope.
The pro-Trump theory promotes the idea the election was stolen and that the former president is secretly still in power.
The crux of the theory is this belief that you are secretly saving the world from this satanic cult of pedophiles and cannibals.
I haven't heard that, but is that supposed to be a bad thing or a good thing?
It starts with something real, like an issue like child trafficking, but then the more you chase this down these rabbit holes, you're one hashtag away from, you click on hashtag save our children, and then you get to hashtag where we go when we go all, hashtag QAnon.
Well, fasten your seatbelts, for this is going to be one heck of a ride.
When people will feel quite free to report you to the FBI, to punch you in the face, to hurt your children.
My parents believe that the insurrection that happened on January 6th was a staged event. They believe that about school shootings, Sandy Hook. Ashley Babbitt, the veteran that was killed at the insurrection, is alive and well today.
What is it that's allowed this disinformation to spread?
When everything seems out of control, you look for something you have control over and something that makes sense. And for a lot of people, unfortunately, that was QAnon.
What is it that makes this so incredibly dangerous?
It's been an incubator of violence, a cause of virulent right-wing extremism.
Mark Ambinder, senior fellow at USC, is an expert in disinformation spread and has watched Q since the first nebulous posts on a site called 4chan in 2017.
Most likely, something that started as a lark, a grift on behalf of one or two people claiming they had some special credential, some access to secret knowledge.
My dad's, I think the way he got to this was these Christian daily devotionals on YouTube. Then they say, oh, if you like this, you would like this video. His biggest influence is this man called Good Dog.
You spoke directly to the man that you think has most radicalized your parents.
I told him that he's tearing families apart and I don't know how he sleeps at night. I had one person respond to me and say, that's what happens. The truth tears people, the truth tears families apart.
For now, Reagan's seeking help in online support groups.
The Reddit community of people like me is up to 30,000, over 30,000 now.
Just on that one forum.
Just on that one forum.
An LA-based psychotherapist we spoke to has this advice for families.
Try not to try to talk your QAnon family member out of their core beliefs. Come to them with some caring and some kindness. Try to connect with them via your pre-existing bonds.
And this is the first of 4 parts. Next episode, we'll get inside the mind of a Q believer. And while QAnon's been known as a right-wing group, it has very much infiltrated the left. Think former Bernie Sanders supporters, for example, and many others you might not expect. We'll have that tomorrow morning at 10:30 a.m. Jess, Frank, I'll throw it back to you.
In our special series, Inside QAnon, we're hearing from families impacted by the conspiracy theory.
KTLA's Christina Pascucci brings us the perspective of a daughter and her father who haven't spoken in more than a year.
There's no way around it. I've lost somebody that I love. The division is so painful.
24-year-old Gracie is the daughter of a QAnon believer.
Q was originally probably a 16-year-old who posted on 4chan saying disgusting things.
What was a joke is now killing people.
People dying.
The beliefs resulting from Q that there's a deep state of mostly Democratic elites pushing pedophilia have inspired murder, an armed standoff, kidnapping plots, and the January 6th siege of the Capitol. Have you spoken to your father?
I don't remember the last time I spoke to him. It's probably been over a year and a half.
How extreme did this really get?
He, I believe, has propagated Q-adjacent information something like 3,000 times since this past November. Some of the things that I have seen have horrified me beyond belief. I can't even know for sure if he understands that he's repeating anti-Semitic things.
Gracie says her father at his core is a good man who maybe doesn't realize the implications of spreading some of these messages on social media.
One of the things that I think really drew him to this movement is that I think he kind of feels like he's been dealt a shorthand in life. We were once considered best friends. My dad, my whole life, if I needed something, I called him first. He definitely wants to put a good foot forward in the world and make positive change.
You reached out to your daughter. I'm curious what your perspective is.
My daughter's amazing. I love her. She and I have completely different ideological takes on almost everything.
I was surprised by Apollo based on the angry tweets I saw that cast doubt on the election, minimized the Capitol riot, climate change, and coronavirus. I expected him to attack. But this is how social media can dehumanize us.
I'm guilty of it sometimes. It's not an actual conversation.
That's how your daughter feels right now, too. She's distraught.
In the end of it all, you basically find out that both people really aren't bad. They want good things for people. It's how we go about it.
People have died because of you.
But if you condemn everybody in the pyramid, then that's not fair to the people in the pyramid.
I asked Apollo whether he's afraid of being associated with some of the more extreme and as yet unfounded beliefs of Q.
There are many people on all sides of all issues that are extremists, that are absolutely nut bars.
You don't see any of your views as nut bar.
I'm sure I have views we haven't spoken about that are completely nut bar. That's why we haven't spoken about them. See,
I think your views are hard for her.
Well, absolutely. They're hard for me. Views aren't supposed to be easy.
What is your message to your father if he could hear you right now?
There are so many things that he has done and can do. From bringing my friends flowers in the hospital, to checking in and making sure I'm okay. That all came before QAnon. We love you. Just don't forget that.
Anything that you want to say to Gracie?
Gracie, I love you. She knows that.
One conclusion is clear. Q's taken on a life of its own, and posts on social media have consequences in our real lives. Christina Pascucci, KTLA 5 News.
He's tearing families apart, and I don't know how he sleeps at night.
There's no way around it. I've lost somebody that I love.
In our QAnon series, we've introduced you to daughters who say they've lost their parents to QAnon. While it's been known as a right-wing extremist group, Q has apparently crossed the aisle and found unlikely allies in wellness influencers and even Burning Man fans.
My fear was based on the fact if these kind of narratives take hold on certain communities, this can really turn into something dangerous.
Linda Barini spent 15 years performing at festivals that preach radical inclusion, care for the environment, and for some, love for Bernie Sanders. There was even a petition to get him to Burning Man in 2016 called #BurnieMan. Over the following year, Barini saw a shift in her, quote, hippie friends.
When Bernie lost to Hillary for the primaries, he started going down the Q rabbit hole, the whole sex trafficking, the elites, the drinking baby blood. This is the talent that I use. These are the producers that I work with.
And just like that, a group of people that previously denounced everything about the right found common ground in their distrust of the media and global elites.
The extreme liberal left met up on the other side with the neo-Nazis. It's just crazy.
The true light workers were going to help Trump because Trump was actually a light worker because he was going to unveil the truth. And so that crossover struck me.
Michelle Bouvier has been in the wellness industry for 2 decades, and she too saw some of her yogi friends change.
She told me I definitely needed to check this thing out.
When you went on your deep dive, what did you find?
JFK Jr. was still alive and going to reappear and save us.
Bouvier says another friend in the industry, a former Bernie supporter, tried to turn her to Q.
He believes that Trump is still coming back to assume the presidency. Every time there was a prophecy or a prediction in Q that something big was going to happen, which none of them really happened, he was very vocal about, just wait till this date.
They need a stronger and stronger drug.
Activist Jen Senko, who made a movie about her own father's radicalization, blames in part the rise of figures like Rush Limbaugh.
The message is that illegal immigrants are far safer, far more dependable, far less of a threat.
Who she says primed everyday people to distrust the mainstream and spew vitriol. But she also says extremism is a direct result of people suffering.
America hasn't seen raises in something like 20, 30 years.
After the January 6th siege, where an estimated 1 out of 10 of those arrested were linked to extremist groups like Q, Senko received an influx of letters from around the world.
And he was completely changed. Some of them are so heartbreaking. Another one is from the UK. The loving, kind-hearted, passionate father I once knew is long gone.
The one thing about getting them back, to reach out and bring people back, has been equated to the skills of deprogramming cult members, encouraging them to question till the point where they start to pull their own threads apart.
In the next part of our series, we speak to a former QAnon member on how he says he escaped. Christina Pascucci, KTLA 5 News. Good morning to both of you. And the former Q believer you're about to hear from shares a compelling account of why we should all be paying attention. He also talks about how he fell down the rabbit hole and also how he pulled himself back out.
We need to convert the ones we can save back to reality, because these people are dangerous. They believe they are on the side of literally God, and their enemies are on the side of literally Satan. When you believe that you are doing good and your enemy is so evil, you will do great evil unto them.
Jitarth Jadeja was a QAnon follower for a year and a half.
I was a big Bernie supporter, and then that whole Hillary and WikiLeaks thing came out. When Trump won the election, I kind of lost all faith in mainstream media.
He was sucked in by videos like this that taught him about the Q storm, what many believers think will happen to those identified by Q as part of the deep state.
The storm is the unsealing of sealed indictments, the declaration of martial law, followed by public executions. That's the whole reason for Q to exist.
These criminals are also known as the deep state, or cabal, because of how they control things behind the scenes.
When you hear something like that, it's like a dopamine hit in your brain where you're like, dude, whoa, that's crazy. Like any drug, you require a bigger and bigger hit to get that same dopamine hit. That's kind of how I fell so far down.
A late 2020 NPR poll said up to 17% of Americans could think Q is true, from at least one lawmaker in the U.S. Congress.
In America, I'd say at least hundreds of thousands. Around the world, millions.
To Italy's parliament. What's the psychology behind what's happening in these people's brains? You mentioned something called shared psychotic disorder.
They hear it for so long that they actually start to share that delusion. And so what it becomes is a partnership of mutually distorted perception.
Psychotherapist John Silimparis.
A lot of these people are in many ways vulnerable. They are disgruntled, they are angry, and it's easy for them to attach to something that they relate to. They want to be part of something, and so they are ripe for the picking. Try to help them re-identify with different things in their lives, not just the myopic thinking of their QAnon conspiracy theory.
How'd you do it? How'd you get out?
First, my social isolation and mental health improved. Secondly, it was a few things that I couldn't rationalize away.
Jitar says that Q would try to prove former President Trump was in on it by predicting phrases he'd say in speeches.
We call it sometimes tippy-top shape.
Someone had asked Q to get Donald Trump to say the phrase, tip-top, tippy-top shape. It wasn't until much later when I saw that that's just something that Donald Trump says.
And I want total rehabilitation. It's got to be in tip-top shape. His nuclear is tippy-top from what I hear. If you had $20 trillion and everything was tippy-top, I like tippy-top. I like everyone that goes to my buildings and my clubs, they're tippy-top.
Jatarth told us watching conspiracy debunkers like Mike Rothschild helped him see the light, and he hopes by sharing his story he can help turn others like him back before more people are hurt.
The Capitol riots, that was really bad. I was shocked, but I wasn't surprised. People died. That was nothing. Imagine if Q actually said take up arms. People should be scared, and these people are dangerous.
During our investigation, we discovered just how pervasive Q is. It crosses party lines and borders and lies within our own families. We just want to let you know we appreciate the many messages we've received the past few days from people sharing their own personal stories and the fact they feel solace in knowing they're not alone. I'm Christina Pascucci reporting live. I'll send it back to you guys in the studio.